protest. It's a little bit of a mixed message there, I suppose, but that looks like a dumb fucking hippie, so not a surprise. A lot of people in chat feel sorry for the police.
Get me on TV. Get me on TV.
Get me on TV. A lot of people in chat feel sorry for the police. I don't blame you. I think we all feel a little sorry for the fucking police. Guy on the right, I don't know what he's doing. He stopped off to get chicken. Maybe he's twerking right now by a fire hydrant. I don't know. We'll check in on him in a bit. At least NBC's got live coverage with audio. We'll take a look at that in a second. Let's go check out the fucking hashtag to see if anybody has driven over any of these dumb motherfuckers yet. Because I expect to see a tweet saying, tragic news, Dodge Charger, rams through crowd, suspect unknown at the moment. And then a picture of Sam Hyde. The Dan Ryan E-Way shut down in protest of violence. I'm very proud of y'all. Bruce Ranner, we trusted you. We believed in you. We even understood the rough politics down in Springfield.
Your mission is to destroy the enemy's ground equipment and bases.
Damn right. Reminder to press X to die before hitting heading. Heading 70 miles an hour. Well, they can't matter very much if you don't motherfuckers want Black lives are precious, and they matter so much. Why are you directing them to literally walk into the lives of the traffic? Next message doesn't. They're on the damn right because they're common sense government. Get negative assholes. The negative assholes are on right now. Watch it. anti-violent protest is not about that. This is about the votes.
Attention to the map!
That's what we just said.
I'm fine. you know, I'm gonna go immediately right back live. But for some reason, from my other iPhone, when I go live, you can't hear. So if this,
Oh, you're working on that technology. So his phone's gonna go dead because the battery's shit this week. But his other iPhone, yeah. This is great fucking clarity. His other iPhone doesn't have audio. Magic bullets. See the sign? And then he asks, this is what democracy looks like. It looks like shit. Weimar America needs Weimar solution. Some kind of taco check mark. If you need people to help you understand why shooting is bad. Somebody on Twitter doesn't tell me that. I don't know that. Here we go, Homo africanus. They're really like big shit. Well, they're only why are they trying to punish you? I don't know how many fucking murders happen. Fucking day or something. Two people get shot all the time. Yeah, maybe it isn't. You already said they're not fucking guns. Not we're gonna get them done. That's the thing. It's not gonna go. Take a look at the results. Oh, we got an update. FBI agent Ryan. FBI Dan Ryan. It's on Dan Ryan. No, Dan Ryan. Looks like he's driving Miata. No, he's looking for it. Sorry for anybody stuck on the Dan Ryan right now. Sure they, Governor's doing this AM. Dan Ryan. I thought you just fucking said, this is unacceptable. This is the government. This is unacceptable. We got cameras and lobbying
Thank you very much.
I like how everybody has a branded shirt. Like, they took the time to get together and print off and stop the violence and all the hashtag shirts and get their shitty signs together. All to march down a street that nobody's going to really fucking notice them on because they're stuck behind them in traffic. Christopher Paulson, this protest is about getting votes for Trump in 2020. That's probably the intended effect. Brian P. for 5, thank you. Uncle Adolph's Cheesecake, thank you for the cultural enrichment, Jim. I want to dedicate my life to the NAACP now. Well, welcome aboard, brother. Together we can change all these racial politics in this country. We just need to shut down every freeway.
Right, I'll get up there.
Of course, they're singing fucking spirituals. Let's see what our reporters got going here.
yeah, people feeling happy. But hey, I can say this. You know, so far nobody went to jail. Cause I ain't never seen a protest in Chicago where nobody went to jail. Not just one person. They try to lock up. They try to lock everybody up. But yeah, it's cool though. So far, nobody went to jail. Even though it's a lot of angry people out here, it's a good thing. Giving these people no money, nothing aggression. You gotta pay a sensitive bond. Possibly take off days from work or business schedule. You don't gotta get scheduled. Everyone be walking up in the courtroom going through all that unnecessary game. That's how it is. Game. It's up there. I can see people just starting to come up this way. Oh, we're in the front of it now, y'all.
Hear that, Jack? He's at the front. They merged together, so might be caught up. Looks like the governor's flying front. Today that Dan Ryan, the guy in Dan Ryan said that was possible. That's the one someone else applied today. Dan Ryan. That would be good. Looks like there are a couple of lost liberals in the event. If anybody sees these two puppers, be sure to get them all to Korea. Hearing more about Dan Ryan standing within his situation. I believe he mentioned yes. Down Dan Ryan to make the time. I think Jenner better show that some of the guys in the locker room can. I promise I'll never let me off the Dan Ryan. Looks like somebody is Good line cover for Dan Ryan. Especially
Attacking!
Current Dan Ryan alert. He's a SEAL man. Step aside this from Sups, along with Dan Ryan,
Attention to the map!
The protest today in Chicago on Dan Ryan and the board member. This is a reminder. And a reminder of family love and loss. Yeah, let's see it tonight. I've never seen yes, maybe if you had jobs, you would be working down there and fucking up everybody's day. Maybe you'd have sympathy with the
The enemy is
drivers stuck
attacking
behind
our
your
base.
fat
Almost reinforced its
trying
defenses.
to get where they're going. If you had a goddamn job. From Souls, people need to drive through these protests more. It was more... If that was more the norm, people would just stop doing this shit. That one was from Souls. Yes. Well, hard to do it when they've got dump trucks blocking off the fucking traffic. Cham Moshi Hebowitz. Just as the Nile River floods every year between June and September, we see the royalty of Africa and the USA has brought this tradition to the Dan Ryan with a twist. M. Night Shyamalan couldn't conceive of. Amir Bear, I heard shut it down when I was cooking. Was this started by a Hebrew American? It's their shtick, right? I can neither confirm nor deny that. Finally, from Romani Del Toro. Gun violence.
Pilots, your mission is to destroy the enemy's ground equipment and bases.
Gotta let them hang.
Fix the enemy!
Holy shit, it's Lockstead in Phoenix. Our favorite home of coverage. Everybody wants to bring up the rest of that troops. Updating what's going on at the Dan Ryan Expressway. The killer at Dan Ryan may not know. Everybody take a look at that picture. Apparently there's a stalker of Dan Ryan. Hey, Kings and Dan Ryan, updating me. Looks like a dangerous man. Really on methamphetamine. Dan Ryan protest taking a relaxing ride down the Dan Ryan. That vehicle facing headway. It's got some great running comments. It's like our dealer, except blacker.
It ain't gonna never stop. My journey never stops. My work is never done. And I thank God. Later on, I come back and thing and speak on this. I really, want to interact more. We can just share thoughts, share ideas, and get it together as we can. Because all of y'all are out.
What happened? I think our keg is dead, everyone. Oh, his battery died. No, he said he'd come back later if that happened. Remember, he's coming back with that slick iPhone 6. That's it. That was stupid. Is that the arcade? It's shut down. All ironic. Covering a protest, shutting down something.
The enemy is getting closer to victory.
about the giants. We have earlier, I don't know, many of you know of Brian Forrester, also was a speaker at Open Mind Conference. He covered elongated skulls. It's also seen after DNA sample to be another reason. Maybe Hughes will convince us that the giants have been too. I find it a fascinating subject because I also feel like a giant sometimes. First I heard about this was actually an interview on Red Eyes Radio with Richard Dewberry. It was called Giant in America, which is also very interesting. Which also covered this Smithsonian Institute cover about all this skeletons found in many places all over the world, especially in the middle of
The enemy is winning! We're on counterattack!
but also other places that found 4,000 skeletons in place. So I must say, I think maybe if I was a little child in school and heard about this subject, I would really be happy about that teacher who told me about it. So maybe it's also because I think that it was a shame I didn't hear about this when I was younger, because if there have been giants 5 meter and 20 centimeters high, shoe size 3 times mine, which is large, it's fascinating. So I really look forward to welcome Hughes Newman, because I hope he can clarify a lot of things. So give a warm welcome to Hughes Newman.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, thank you very much, Frank. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. And so today we're going to be talking about quite a strange subject, to be honest with you. It's not something you normally probably hear at a fascinating conference such as this, but it has parallels, because there's a cover-up going on with this story, a huge cover-up that's been going on for 150 years by major institutions, not just in America, but around the world. And we're really questioning our true origins of where we came from. If there was a giant race in North America, which I'm going to suggest there was in this lecture, and in different parts of the world, then why has that been removed from the historical record and deliberately brushed under the carpet? But what got me into this was actually other research. I've been a megalithomaniac for many years. I've got a couple of books out, one called Earth Grids, looking at connections and ley lines of ancient sites around the world. I just recently published a book about stone circles. And have any of you seen that amazing and crazy TV program, Ancient Aliens? About 4 of you, brilliant. So I've been involved in that for about the last 6 years. They keep inviting me on for some reason. And also there was a TV show, if you haven't seen it, it's worth trying to find it. It's called Search for the Lost Giants, which was instigated by my co-author, Jim Vieira. Also, like Frank, I organise conferences. This is a couple of conferences I organise. One in London, the Origins Conference every November, and Megalithomania, we've been running for over 10 years, or 11, 12 years even, in May. So if you want to come over and hear more about megaliths and giants, please do. I also travel and explore quite extensively. It's one of the reasons I'm quite happy to come to Denmark. This is a very short journey. It's a 2-hour flight for me. But we do get around the world. We run tours and sometimes conferences in other places. A very good friend of mine is Brian Forrester. I believe some of you met him a couple of years ago here, and we organise tours. And this is really to enable us to fund our research and our travel, because we travel a lot and we research a lot and we don't have any funding, any sponsors. So any income we get goes into that. But it's really the megaliths. And this is one aspect which really intrigues me. I was wondering, do the lights need to be on the screen so much? Because it seems like there's they're bleaching out a little bit. And is one aspect, for instance, out of many, is these polygonal walls we find all over the world. And on the bottom left there, we can see there's me standing there against this polygonal wall. Oh, whoops a daisy. One more time. This is actually one of the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. This is from Peru, this is Italy, and this is Easter Island. And all over the world we find examples of massive megalithic blocks, often attributed to giants. We find that also at many of the quarries, such as this one at Baalbek in Lebanon, where some of these stones weigh over 1,000 tons. And they're always talked about giants in prehistory, in the legends, and in the folklore, connecting it all up. And now there's some truth to these myths and these legends. These are images you may have seen on the internet over the years, even over the decades. And every single one of these you see here appeared in books, appeared on multiple websites, articles. Every single one of their photos is a hoax. They were created in 2002 on the Worth 1000 website as a competition for the best archaeological giant Photoshop image. And these were some of the examples that came forward. But don't let that put you off, because there are some real giants, not necessarily quite as outrageously big as these, but most certainly they do exist. This is just some images representing the Bible. Really. On the left we have David meeting Goliath, which is everyone knows about this from their childhood onwards. On the right hand side here we have King Og of Bashan's bed. This is supposed to be extremely tall giant who once lived in the Prime lands. And this is a representation of that. So all throughout the Bible we have hundreds of accounts of the Canaanites, the Amorites, many other tribes that were witnessed and talked about in the Old Testament. And they sound very matter of fact, as we'll see a little bit later. In Britain we have stories of Jack the Giant Killer, which later became Jack the Beanstalk, which was much softer Victorian fairy tale. But these go way back to prehistory. These stories of Jack the Giant Killer, defeating these giants in Survivor's Mound, Devon, even into Wales and other parts of England. And I've written an article about this, which is going to feature in the next book, which looks at all the giants of Britain. And we found over 100 accounts of authenticated giant bones and skeletons across the country. And it makes you wonder why these traditions emerge. Are they primarily bones and skeletons going back over the last 1,000 or so years? All over Europe we have examples. This was a map put together by Cecilia Hall, which is a fellow giantologist. She's been researching and plotting on Google Earth many accounts, and this is some you get from Europe and the Middle East. So you can see they really congregate all over Britain. All over this area you find examples and traditions that match this. But coming back to England, even in my hometown where I'm from, a place called Cambridge, actually a village called Cherry Hinton, there's a series of hills called the Gog Hills. Now these are what is aware of this, those are Gog was the giant that was defeated on the Poe,
Attention to the map!
back into prehistory. And actually on these hills, giant skeletons were found. There's actually a place called Giant's Grave, which I used to walk past every day on my way to school. So I find it quite weird that even in my local area where I grew up, there's some very strong traditions of giants. Even at Stonehenge, we have very interesting accounts that are very, very far back. This is the earliest pictorial depiction of Stonehenge. It goes back to the early 1400s. It's based on the history of the Kings of Britain by Geoffrey Montfort, and illustrated in a different version of that by Robert Wace. And it clearly shows Merlin here, his books, Silent Gentleman, and a giant stones into place. But the interesting thing about this is that if you look into that particular book, The History of the Kings of Britain, which was published in the 1300s, it talks about giants bringing stones over from North Africa to Ireland. Eventually, many thousands of years later, they were then brought over from Ireland to Salisbury Plain. And this is where how Stonehenge was apparently formed, according to legend. The first known name of Stonehenge was the giant's dance, referred to the giant's ring. So there's different versions, but it was never called Stonehenge. It's a later Saxon.
Launching an attack!
Hanging stones. Just give you some examples of some of the skeletons, bones, and skulls that have been found in the Stonehenge.
Take 'em down!
This is a huge skull that was noted by John Aubrey that was placed outside a church. And it must have been somewhere between 8 and 9 feet tall. This is quite an interesting one, just down the road from Stonehenge in a mound in Salisbury. A 9'4" skeleton was found. This is most certainly in the Stonehenge greater landscape. And this was found at a site called the Giant's Grave. In 1802, another skeleton was reported. This time was 14 feet. And this was reported in several different books, diaries at this time. Where is that skeleton? We have this version here as well, just further south. A few miles south of Stonehenge, a skeleton of large dimensions was found in the Woodgate Mound Group. There's another one here, a 7-foot skeleton, was found in that area too. So the list goes on, just around Stonehenge itself, where it said the giants may have constructed this. And in the mounds we actually find reports of bones. We know that in that area, when the Beaker people came to the area around 2,300 BC, they were a much larger type of stock than the local people were at the time. We'll get more into it later. Even in Glastonbury, where I lived for many years, there's Glastonbury Abbey, and in the 1100s, this particular story emerged, and it's been authenticated by several different people. When there's basically quite a long story, I'll just summarise this quickly. But there was like, at the time of King Henry, he was kind of instructed in dreams to like research what was going on in Glastonbury Abbey at the time, and they dug beneath the ground in a certain spot,
closer to victory.
and they found halfway down, about 8-10 feet down, they found this. They dug further down and they found a huge coffin, like a wooden log coffin, like with a Celtic style burial, which had a giant skeleton within it. And this later was described as King Arthur and Guinevere had been discovered. And this is what was described on this lead cross. We think the lead cross was created by the monks to increase pilgrims and tourism to the area. But the genuine discovery of this extremely tall, potentially 9-foot tall giant is still in the records, and it's unfortunately lost now because it was almost 1,000 years ago. But it does give hints that there's a genuine phenomenon of this in ancient England. This just shows you Europe. Again, we're going to move quickly over to Ireland here. This is a place called Four Knocks, where huge skeletons were found in the Boyne Valley. This is a very interesting site. It's near Newgrange, Tara. It's like a burial chamber, but there were many satellite mounds in the area and chambers. And in these mounds, back in 1950, very, very tall skeletons were unearthed. This fits with the legend of Tuatha and Firbolg and others in ancient Ireland. This is probably the most famous Irish giant. This was found in County Antrim, Ireland, and it was thought to be 12 foot 2 inches tall. The chest was 6 inches. The arms were 4 foot 6 inches long. It had 6 toes on one of the feet. This was found in like a peat bog, so it was preserved. It was almost mummified, and they had to cover it up in this area here because the Victorian women kept fainting with what was beneath there. But it got displayed in Liverpool, Dublin and London, and then it disappeared. And this is a photo next to a train carriage, so you can see the size of it. And it completely disappeared. Now people claim this may have been a hoax, but there's no evidence it was. Other examples, I'm just going to give you a few examples of various different areas. This was found at a place called Dysart in Louth. And they found basically a skull and various bones that would have been of a person 10 feet tall. Just a matter-of-fact account from a newspaper reported by local people. It's the same kind of story that you find all over the world, and there just doesn't seem any reason to make this up. exaggerating slightly, and maybe he was 9 feet tall. Still tall. Even over in Egypt down here, we have examples. Obviously, all over the Middle East, many examples. We can spend days here going through different ones. This is one interesting example. This is from Philae Island, the Temple of Isis in Egypt. And they found a row of tombs, which they found 7-foot tall giants, but they also found a giant which was 11-foot 1 inch tall. Again, this was a matter-of-fact account. It appeared in many newspapers. 1881. Where the bones are, again, we don't know. But this is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence. These are a mummified giant finger that was found and researched by Gregor Spory in the 1980s. And he got together and he got told about this former grave robber who had a sort of legacy in his family of grave robbing. They had all these goods and other things they would sell to people. And he got taken up 100 kilometers north of Cairo to this family. He met this old gentleman, and this was presented to him. And it was found about 150 years ago, not too far from Giza. And it got X-ray, and it was proven to be a genuine human finger. But it was so big that it was like 15 inches long total, and it must have been someone 15, 16 feet tall. I talked to Gregor about this, and he says it's a genuine thing. He saw the thing himself. Where the rest of the body is, he didn't know. The problem is he went back there 10 years later to try and meet the family, and they moved away and disappeared on paper. So we don't have much to go on. I wish we'd taken a sample and some DNA testing. I've recently written an article about the giants of ancient Egypt on the ancient-origins.net website. And while I was doing that, we went up to the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and they've got an Egyptian display there. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw a boomerang, an Egyptian display going back to the first dynasty, 3200 BC in ancient Egypt, which is one of the many connections between Australia and ancient Egypt. This really intrigued me because here below him is a classic flint knife which you get in that era of prehistoric Egypt. This is also the end of one, but this much of it. This is clearly somewhat bigger. This one. And it says on the description that a very large flint knife must have been ceremonial. This is something they put on all giant artifacts they find in different parts of the world. This really intrigued me because in this particular area there was a second, exactly the same site as this. Actually sent to home, not place, I think. The second dynasty king was known to be 8 feet tall, also found in this same site. And was written out of the early records. And so we know that this was the first dynasty in the same site. It's a ceremonial mace head about 8 times the size they should be. We find all these little specks of evidence that was built up to some suggestion that there may have been at least elite giants existing in history. As we mentioned earlier, the Bible, so many accounts. It's actually a really intriguing book. In some ways, if you're a giantologist, alternative historian, that's actually different. If you're religious, it's even more interesting. But it's just some examples, so I'm not going to go through these, but you can just have a look at them occasionally. They were basically multiple giants in the Bible, Israelites and so forth, going up into the area of Canaan. That is actually the area of the giants, the Canaanites, the Amorites. And they witnessed them. This is written about in the New Testament. They were defeated from battle. both around 7 feet tall. With this story here, 1838, earlier in 1807, witnessed when they dug down, when they were digging the foundations of a certain site, found all these inscriptions, and an absolutely massive skeleton, which is 11 feet and 4 inches tall. And they even depicted it in this piece of art. You can see that here. Again, what happened to the skeleton, what happened to these inscriptions is unknown. In the area of Old Gaul, going into France and other areas, with this is a particularly interesting account. It could be the real smoking gun of proving that most certainly European giants existed. This is a place called Castelnau, which is on the south coast of it's on the south coast of France, going into the Mediterranean, and there's a huge mound there. And in 1890, some huge bones were discovered. They were examined by Professor Keener, who admitted that the giant in question, when they analysed the bones and measured them correctly, found that he must have been 11 foot 6 inches tall. This is only one example, one human being, but these bones are still in Montpellier University, and we're making inquiries as we speak to try and get hold of them and get some analysis done on them. But again, this is completely covered up. No one is interested, but the research is there. And these just shows you the analysis of the bones. This is a standard size human bone. This is the one found at Castelnau. That's just the tip of the iceberg in ancient France. Also in ancient France, especially the Brittany area and the Mayenne area, we find huge megalithic sites, huge mounds. Some of the largest stones ever moved and constructed and erected in that country were in France. So we know that there was a serious case of megalithomania happening in that country, and it may have well be due to these 11 foot 6 tall people. In Tenerife, we have examples. This was actually from the early 1900s, and they potentially found a 14-foot tall giant there, and in a grave. This was like obviously one of the tribal leaders. But there's a tribe called the Guanche. I went over there recently, actually, to investigate this, and there's actual black stone pyramids there, a whole bunch of them in various parts of the country. And there's a tribe called the Guanche who were not interfered with until the Spanish came in the 1500s, and they lived a Stone Age lifestyle up until this period. And they mummified their dead, just like the Egyptians, with embalming and other such techniques. They often had red hair, which is another trait we find with many of these giants. And one of them found was 14 feet tall. Other ones were routinely 7 foot tall. So how did they get these traits, and where did they originally come from? We find the same thing in Turkey, at a place called basically not too far from Hattusa. And we find 7 foot warriors discovered. This is actually a polygonal wall, not too far from there, a place called Alajahoyak. And we find these at Hattusa as well. And these are Hittite sites, apparently, but they could be much older. And there was this previous culture called the Hattians, who may well have been giants. Sardinia, JJ and I have visited it twice because we're so obsessed by this country. I did an entire lecture about this at the recent Megalithomania conference. There's some of the most impressive megalithic sites I've ever seen. There's a whole type of site called the Giants' Graves, or the Giants' Tombs, and there's about 60 or 70 of these left. And there's accounts like this one on the bottom right of giant 8-foot skeletons being found on the north coast, and it's got these Naraji towers were thought to be built by giants. These are the classic kind of giants' graves, and we have other sites which we haven't been to this one, but we have these accounts, and there's stories and there's several TV shows have been done on this, claiming that local families and farmers have been finding giant bones on their lands for hundreds of years. So again, it's worth going to these places and investigating them yourself, because it's remarkable. In Japan, at Osaka, we have amazing sites there. We have, these dolmens, huge megalithic dolmens, just like we find in Europe. Massive stone walls, polygonal style. This is from 1918, and again we find 7 foot tall skeletons. And we find, one of the things we keep finding, which we couldn't believe we're finding these in Japan, decayed teeth are not found. The bony structure of the skeletons are massive. So they're not talking about thin basketball players who are really stretched tall. These are genuinely the same proportions as normal human beings, but just larger in every dimension. The shin bones in most cases are somewhat flat. Some of these skeletons are 7 feet high, even shorter ones are over 6 feet. And so that's just, we notice the anatomic anomalies here. We notice the perfect teeth. This is something we keep finding in relation to these giant skeletons, and also these overly massive jaws. And what we'll find in North America and in some other places around the world, they often had double rows of teeth. This is one of the weirdest things we've come across, but this is certainly a phenomenon. We commit a whole chapter to that in the book, Giants on Record. Even in China, there's mummified remains of fair-skinned, red-haired people. There's pyramids there, there's dolmens, and these mummies that were found were about 7 feet tall. No one knows where they came from, apart from there are clues that they may have come from Scotland, because they found some tartan cloth in with some of the burials, which matches one of the tribes in ancient Scotland. This is the weirdest thing, considering these are about 6,000 years old. And then we have this ridiculous giant footprint with me and Michael Tellinger there. And I just wanted to show you, compare it to my foot. It's the scientific analysis here. And that's how big it is. It's about 4.5 to 5 feet long. It's on the Swaziland, South Africa border. And apparently it's 9 million years old, and it's of a woman. It's not a male foot. It's got 6 toes, and you can see where the foot is pressed in and lifted up. You have this kind of part here. It's almost like when you pull out of, like, you know, mud, you leave this overhang of the thing you've just stepped in. And that's there. But the problem is that it's ridiculously big. So either it's someone with massive feet, a clown or something, or it's actually a genuine footprint, or it could have been carved. Some people think it's actually carved. It looks a bit like so it's virtually impossible. So jurists are trying to know what's real giant footprint. But we have in South Africa, Dr. Clark, 10 feet tall skeleton were unearthed that wouldn't become a footprint. But there are reports from that area. In Peru, there's actual 8-foot tall giants were uncovered going into the Amazon area. They were actually witnessed being alive, and red hair again, so we keep finding into this. And even at Tiwanaku in Bolivia, claims to be a site. There's reports, legends of the great god Viracocha, who was a pre-Inca god, known later to cover, created a race of giants made of stone, creating never-ending sites along the whole Sacred Valley, which was part of Viracocha. And he created them with all these sites, he got them to build them, constructed them. And then he had to kill them off because they became cannibals, they were attacking people, they were eating people, which is rude. And he had to destroy them. The only way he could destroy them was with a flood. So this, I couldn't believe it when I looked into the old records. Bolivia and found that almost exactly matches the same conditions that we find in the body. Australia, There's numerous accounts here. I'm just going to run through these fairly quickly because originally this had 5,000 accounts. But this is just an example of a 7-foot skeleton, and it seems that the Aborigines, or the correct Aborigines, the word very talking in some parts of the country. This is from 1921. This is an example of some huge implements that were found all over Australia. This is Rex Gilroy holding a researcher in Australia. We have a giant tooth here, must have been somewhere between 10 and 12 feet tall. We have elongated skulls.
Somebody attack him!
Moving to New Zealand, Pacific, find footprints, find counts, they go on and on. This is actually a party with 6 toes. Why is this interesting? Because we find this at several accounts. Not only in we find it in Ireland, the Irish giant, the 12 giants, 100 feet had 6 toes, but also in the Bible. They talk about this as well.
Attack the enemy!
A huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. And so we do find these kind of same traits occurring in different parts of the world. This is a place called Nan Madol in Micronesia on the island of Pohnpei. This is an amazing place. I'm determined to visit here one day because it's made of huge basalt columns, like a city built partly underwater. But the thing is, in 1859, they found an extremely large series of bones of gigantic size. And here's a little clip I'm going to play you from the Search for the Lost Giants TV show, which gives a little indication of what we're dealing with here.
Hi, Jim.
How you doing? Okay. My neighbor, Al Parapan, waves me down, and he tells me that he has a cautionary tale for me.
I heard that you were looking into the giant thing.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to talk to you about Nan Madol and their giants.
Oh, yeah.
In the mid-'70s, I happened to be teaching school out there, and I was warned that you do not take anything from Nan Madol.
The ancient city of Nan Madol lies off the far-flung Pacific island of Pohnpei in Micronesia. Its imposing stone walls rise up out of the ocean, and to this day, its construction remains shrouded in mystery. The local legends whisper of a lost civilization, ancient giant kings, and a fearsome curse that would strike down anyone who disturbed their spirits. But in 1907, ruling Governor Victor Berg dared to ignore the warnings.
The governor went to Nan Madol and dug out a giant burial ground and died the next day. We're not in Nan Madol here. However, I think that the warning should be heeded.
Much heated. Thank you very much.
Well, not really that well heeded, actually, because we keep searching for giants, and we actually have a whole chapter in the book called Curse of the Giant Hunters, which is worrying somewhat, where several people who've actually done this is in North America as well, have actually either disappeared, they've gone mad, or they've died. So please pray for me. Thank you. Even in Patagonia, this is one of the most interesting areas when we're looking at modern giants, because even up to the early 1900s, eyewitness accounts of various navigators who went down to this area from the 1500s to the 1900s have witnessed these. These are some artistic illustrations. This is the bottom tip of South America, basically, the Chile and Argentina, I believe. And numerous people, even Sir Francis Drake went down there and he witnessed 7 to 8 foot tall giants, Magellan and various other Spanish sailors. And there was a real kind of movement of giantology in the early to mid 1500s, which even stretched into Britain at the time because of Sir Francis Drake witnessing these giants. Also at that time, North American giants were being witnessed by early explorers. We'll get into that more in detail shortly. But this was taken in 1901, this photo, and that's Captain Frederick Cook. who did his famous voyage around this whole area between Patagonia and Antarctica. Now there's this big hoo-ha about pyramids in Antarctica being discovered and photographed relatively recently, but whether there were pyramids there or not, there were most certainly giant races living in this area at least 1,000 years ago, and probably much, much earlier. And so we have to really question, you know, what is going on. You know, is there a actual continent under here? Is it actual land mass? There is proof of this. Some people even say Atlantis is under here, which is something my co-author Jim Vieira is slightly obsessed by.
You know, the
But in
internet's
North
really,
America,
really,
this is what
we
we're
should
going to look
probably
at
destroy
now,
it.
because this is the
Betterment
most
of mankind.
weird and interesting place.
Because some
if you're
people are really dumb.
interested in ancient sites, giants, elongated skulls, and other ancient mysteries. You wouldn't think that, would you?
Fucking
You'd
annoys
think
me.
North America
Yes, War
didn't have
Thunder,
these
you
kind of
are
things to
stupid
consider.
if you
This is a
think War
graphic I
Thunder
put
should be
together
balanced.
for an article.
The game is
the
meant
top
to be
10
realistic,
giants,
so not everything is
in North America,
balanced.
just
I'm
showing
like,
you a
yeah,
variation,
fuck yourself.
grading in height. From my height around 6 foot all the way up to this one account we have of 18-foot giant.
Yeah, but the game's meant to be fun to play.
Which is in Pennsylvania. So that we're not too sure if that was a slight exaggeration or not. But certainly ones up to about 10 or 11 feet are most certainly potentially real. These are just a handful of the accounts we've collected from town and county histories, newspapers, academic journals, diaries and personal journals of doctors, and lawyers and politicians and other people who dug these bones up for themselves when they first arrived in North America from the 1500s, but mainly from the 17th to 1800s.
I was talking about tanks specifically.
The Smithsonian, you can see them mentioned here.
Oh yeah, no, I can.
Like the fucking tanks, the balance, it's not important.
So
I'm like, you're a fucking idiot, right?
Here's a map,
Challenger
an
should
map that
be
was
like
put
the
together by Cecilia
AMX-30
Hall. You can see
Venus
her
or
blog
Venus
here. I do
shouldn't be going
recommend
up
people,
against Challengers and
friend
M1
her on
Abrams.
Facebook. But she's been doing some brilliant
Because it can't
maps for us.
fucking
I
deal
wanna
with it.
credit
It doesn't
her.
have a stabilizer.
Just kind of piece it together in this Google Earth world, and you can see, you can just basically
That's a bad
see how
example.
they
My example's
really
much better.
get ridiculous here around this area.
Well, it can.
You've got the Ohio Valley, you've got the Kanawha Valley.
Trust me.
In Ohio.
Right, I've been having
West
horrible
Virginia.
games of
That's
British
where
tanks. I
the
fucking
real
jumped into
intense
German tanks the other
amount
day and got a
have been
8-kill
found,
game and we still lost.
Which is compelling, but also we find,
It's
you know, some of
fucking
the
funny.
ones down here.
It was like fucking Tiger Commander
California,
driving around the map, fucking
especially
ending
going to
everybody.
the Channel Islands, Catalina Island, and St. Nicholas, and so forth.
It was kind of funny.
Some of the skeletal remains.
No, it's
and
the problem with
discoveries
higher
go
tier
back
tanks
to
is
between 10,000 and 40,000
the
years ago.
MX-30B2 Renus or
There's
Janus
actual evidence
is
now
like one of the
of
top
human
tier
occupation
fucking
in that area
French tanks.
40,000 years ago.
Problem
There's
is
evidence we
that you
found
put this tank,
New
which was developed in
Jersey,
1963,
up in this
a top
area,
tier at 8.7, where it's
also in
going to see
different
shit
parts of
that was
California
developed in the
and
80s.
Nevada and Utah.
This tank is not an
Over
80s tank.
100,000
It doesn't have a
years
vertical
ago. They found
stabilizer
skeletons and bones
or any
going
fucking
back to this
stabilizer.
particular time.
It
This is something
has
we feature in the very final
fucking
chapter
an alright
of
gun.
the book.
It has no armor just because it has some
chapter called
PRA on
Origins
it
of the
doesn't
Tall
make it
Ones.
compatible
There
to
seems
fight
be much
against
more going on
fucking
in North America
Challengers,
than people realise.
T-64Bs.
And we even have to credit
No.
Geoffrey of Monmouth in the History of the Kings of Britain.
This tank
Where
cannot
he kind of
compete against an
mentions,
M1 Abrams that can
Ross
drive
Hamilton sent this to
50
me.
kilometers an
I
hour
was aware of
forward,
this quote.
fire
I've
on the
read,
move
I've
and
read
kill
that
you.
book several times. But he believes this is a description of America.
Just because it has
beyond
a
the
ERA,
realms of
just
gold,
lower
beneath
it.
the sunset
Shouldn't be up
lieth
that high.
island, girt about by ocean, guarded by ocean, Earth's the haunt of giants.
proper lot of
Now, if
cucumber
that is
in
North
Japan
America, that would be
farms.
interesting, but it may not be because it's not exactly the description. But we have people like Sir Francis Drake, who in 1578 he met some Patagonians, but he also, in his journal that became a book written by his nephew, which came out in 1628, he basically sailed all the way around South America and up the coast of California, probably the area of San Francisco, where he went onto land to get his boats fixed, rest up, get supplies.
It's about
and so
realism.
forth. And
If
he
you
met
make
a
tanks
tribe of
realistic,
giants.
of course. It's like,
And
it's
also
not really about...
Magellan,
if I
the
wanted
Spanish
a completely
explorer, also
realistic
witnessed
tank
giants
game,
from this
I'd
area
go
and
and fucking
commented on
buy
the
a
strength of body
realistic tank
size,
simulator.
the hideousness of
If I want to play
choices.
realistic
This
aircraft,
is
I
actually
go
what
play
happened to Sir
IL-2.
Francis Drake. When he arrived,
If I wanted
there
a
was
stopgap
such
solution in
panic
between,
that
I play War Thunder. Not
It's like, the fucking game can be really draining sometimes. It's like, oh, isn't it fun? You one-shot people that are getting the side or the bottom of their tank. It's like, well, it depends. Like in a British tank, I can't one-shot them. Because of the fucking ammo. The ammo sucks cock. The Gaijin found secret documents to suggest this is the case. So, everything should be balanced. You know what the dictator of the Philippines, I'm just going to call him the dictator of the Philippines, has recently just said? The church says he will resign as soon as someone proves God exists. He said he will resign as soon as someone proves God exists. The guy's a mega troll. He's apparently there's suggestions that he's been killing people as political rivals recently by accusing them of being drug dealers. That way that they can just get shot by the police on the spot. Yeah, that's what people do in the Philippines. Like they hit their neighbor, they'll fucking shoot their neighbor, and then they'll leave a note saying he was a drug dealer, and the police let them off with it. Because Duterte's policy is shoot all drug dealers and shoot anybody who does drugs. He did make a statement saying that he would, as mayor, drive around the city on his motorcycle looking for targets. What the fuck's going on? He's not social justice. He's just crazy. Oh, Trump likes him. It's really funny.
Engaging the enemy.
Early explorers. It's so fascinating, some of the stories. Scripture, very tall, well formed. They were some accounts cannibals, some of them they were tattooing. And one particular tribe that was witnessed by Canida was quite amazed actually, because other Spanish people use these tribes, but some of them treated them really well. They were remembered, but others weren't. This is another really strange account, which this is Caribbean islands, really by historian Peter Martin, who assisted at the Council of the Indies, and there was a certain giant that was Christianized and tended to Spain.
Donald Trump did to almost entirely avoid London during the UK visit. It's because there's people protesting and when he hits it, people protest. It seems kind of cowardly, like if people are protesting then that's an even better reason to show up, you know? Well, you know what's funny?
But this is strange.
The US ambassador to the UK's name is Woody Johnson. Oh boy. What an unfortunate name. That's going to be somebody's uncle. Hey look, it's Uncle Woody. He's come to touch you. Inappropriately again. It's like Anonymous. His brothers are Willie and Richard. His Atlantic uncle Jan Venus and his cousin Don Dick Trickle.
Even Captain John Smith in early 1600s. This part of North America, so we're looking at the eastern part of America, and they witnessed 7 to 8 foot tall giants. And actually, in this map, this is a giant, and here it says, it describes a giant, giant-sized tribal leader. In New England, we find the same thing. It's a place I've researched with Jim Vieira. He lives up in Ashfield, Massachusetts. These are the old tribal names of this area. It's really this river here is probably the most important one, because all along this river, the Connecticut River, we find examples of tribes living by the river, obviously for the water, the fresh fish and so forth. And most of the accounts are kind of along this particular, you can see them here. Most of the accounts from New England seem to be associated with good fishing places, and entire villages and towns ruled by giants were discovered there, and all the traditions and stories back this up. We even find dolmens. This is actually on one of the islands just off the coast there, and you find classic dolmens there. It's really quite something. Martha's Vineyard, that is. This is a place called I think Cannon Rock, or called Phaeton Rock, and it was reported on in 1859 as like a hanging rock or a dolmen. And interestingly, in this, not too far from there, if we head a bit further north, Passaconaway was a chief of the Pennacook tribe, and he was the last kingly sachem or chief, but he became what's called a Bashaba, chief of chiefs, and he lived to 120 years old, and he was said to be between 7 and 8 feet tall, living in the 1600s. So he was trying to create peace because there was wars going on all throughout New England at this time between the different tribes. And interestingly, right next to where his reservation was, there was actually a stone circle that's been found, which I couldn't believe when I witnessed this. And this was actually recorded in the 1800s and the 1600s as well as having existed. So it's very intriguing that you start finding megalithic sites linked with these giants, even in North America. There's even megalithic chambers, which we find of similar style all over Europe, obviously, but we find them very much so all over, hundreds of them all over New England. I've written quite an extensive article about this, and we feature this in a couple of chapters in the book. If we look at Connecticut, for instance, this area on the south coast here, New Haven, this is the area of interest here. There's Yale University in that area with the Skull and Bone Society and various other areas, but there's connections there because we're finding the Peabody Museum in New Haven, Connecticut. In 1904, some extremely large skeletons were uncovered, and they were written about and reported in the journals and in the newspapers.
It's official, we now live in the Austin Powers universe now. So it applies. Hey, we're a fat bastard, still a bad guy, but he's the president.
Based on one of the quotes, thigh bone of the giant skeleton is twice as large as that of the but this is completely built over like half of the city there, Stone County. But you find the same story.
Trump reportedly treats Putin like a confidant, and the two men commiserate about how the fake news deep state are against him. Trump, blah blah, fake news, blah blah, deep state.
When we were recording the show, we based ourselves on
I don't know. Don't know.
I've got another little video on the show, which is just looking at some research we were doing up in...
It's gone to penalties.
50 miles due north.
And try to hit a couple of places Rockingham.
Jim and team members here are hunting for a giant skeleton reportedly unearthed 160 years
We'll see.
but which eventually...
This is the conversation someone's made up. Yes, we are. Trump, blah blah, fake news, blah blah, deep state. Yes, Mr. Trump, you're correct. Smart man. Trump, I like you, Mr. Putin. You're a good guy. Something like Putin, I keep sucking. I work the shaft, cut the boss.
So this is the site in question. Here's the other right here.
Someone else, I'm both disgusted and intrigued by future Trump foreign party.
And when they uncovered the legend right above there, found something that they didn't expect.
Workers were busy with the arduous task of building the Cheshire Railroad line through holes that were so rocky that blasting was required. While clearing away debris, the man unwittingly uncovered a Native American burial ground. One of the skeletons was unique.
They exhumed the native chief of giant stature.
The skeleton was not only giant, but possessed other unique anatomic attributes as well.
He was noted to have a massive jawbone that could fit over the face of a vine. And double rows of teeth. But there we don't know what happened. It's an open mystery right now. You know, we came from here. Now it's like a post-industrial wasteland.
And just across the river, another one.
The other side. Yeah. So you can see
Engaging the enemy.
these long faces, antenna-like projections coming up.
Discovered in the 1800s, the carvings are believed hundreds or perhaps even thousands of years old. Some say they were carved by members
It's a
of
stykke.
indigenous people. The
Så du kan til ikke sejt.
Getting closer to victory.
Yeah, it was taking so slow.
Placed near the river long ago.
The Alex and push him.
But there's another theory. Although many of the petroglyphs
Penalties,
have
Russia
been
3,
destroyed
Croatia
or
3.
worn away, earlier sketches depict additional skull-like
Croatia need to slap on past Russia to win. Apparently. Donald Trump won the entirety of London. Oh, was the entirety of London? He scored a Downing Street as itinerary that is likely to prompt accusations he's trying to avoid planned protests.
Jim and Hugh head to the library in hopes that the records housed there will verify the existence of the skeleton and perhaps shed light on what became of it.
Okay, so that just gives you a little clip. You were really getting into that, weren't you? All the music and everything. So that gives you a little clip. Just to this is how we actually do it. We don't have, you know, a film crew and cool music following us around everywhere. But this is how we go and investigate. We go into the libraries. We look through the old records. We talk to people, we find evidence. With this case, this continued. We found written evidence of giants with double rows of teeth being discovered in Rockingham, Vermont.
You fucking what, man?
Out where the family lived, that, you know, where the bones and the skeleton ended up. They were actually on display in a doctor's office in the street, in the middle of the street. We found the doctor's office. We found the glass window where this 8-foot-tall skeleton was on display. It had been removed by NAGPRA in 1990. We'll get onto that shortly. This is where a lot of these disappear. This is the petroglyphs in question, and this is the strange teeth. Very large skull here compared to all the, well, I don't know what these antennas are and all that kind of stuff, ancient aliens, etc. But this has got the really weird depiction of teeth here. So we're questioning whether that was one of the earliest depiction of one of these anatomic anomalies, these double rows of teeth. But anyway, let's move slightly west from there and head into New York State. Now, this whole area is fascinating. Not New York City really, but New York State. We have some it's the most eastern part of the mound culture sites. You don't really get anything much further east apart from the shell mounds on the coast of Maine and Vermont. These are where the earth and mound culture is. In these mounds, numerous giant skeletons. Here's just one example from Syracuse. This is from 1849, sorry, 1819. And this was from Diary of Victor Peter Clark. And he was talking about the skeletons of extraordinary size. We found the skulls of comparatively large.
Hello.
Surrounded with a full set of double teeth.
Russia lost.
Yay!
Yeah, you can solve it.
What? Croatia.
Similar description for the same area here.
Yeah, but I don't think you want to talk about that really.
No.
Considering the 1990s.
The problem with the way they bury it is that when they were exposed to air, you see that the last point up there, it often crumbled to dust.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
Believe that means, oh, they just sensational front page New York Times. They're hidden in these old towns.
Well, it was a good idea to have more the countries put in together, but
Yeah,
in
but
the long run,
whatever,
it
you have
will
one ethnic group in charge
Yeah,
and fucking persecutes everybody else.
Yeah.
Does it end well?
Yep.
Going for the last seven or so years. This is how we find this stuff.
Basically, the only thing you have in common is actually fucking because they're only Slavic people. It's not gonna fucking work. It's the same as put Denmark and Sweden in one country.
Double rows of teeth, a large maple tree was dug up the bones of a man of great stature who were pumped. This guy was so inspired by what he saw with his kids.
So it'll be Croatia and England.
Yep.
So they work in the same group.
Eventually, I'm so excited by this. He decided to make these
Well, and like there was 300 matches I had to play.
Yeah, we don't have a crystal fucking ball.
I guess every country they played against each other when it's in the higher ranks. More like the only one who hasn't played against each other is probably some smaller countries like.
This area is this way, just the giant accounts here.
It's called Ireland.
I'm going to show you one more clip because I want
San Marino or something.
This is the last clip I'm going to see this. I want to introduce you to Ross Hamilton. Ross Hamilton is, we call him the godfather of giant. Take him down! So that is his name. If you ever meet Ross Hamilton, you have to call him the godfather of giant. You will laugh out loud.
The enemy's getting closer to victory.
He is one of the main researchers who wrote a classic book on the tradition of giants that everyone ignored, everyone ridiculed. He wrote it about 15 or 20 years ago. No one took it seriously. So we've been championing him. He's helped us. He's been so selfless, so brilliant. And he's been collecting all the accounts.
Trump, you should really shut up about Russian collusion if you wanted to blow over. Stop tweeting about it. Twitter, you fucking idiot.
What now?
It's just the way he's like, public opinion is firmly turned against the big witch hunt and the special counsel. Public understands the collusion with Russia. In brackets, so ridiculous. The two FBI lovers were a fraud against our nation. Only collusion is with the damned. Fucking shut up. You're not helping yourself.
They had decided to meet with the Ross Hamilton.
He's such a fucking idiot.
Godfather of giantology.
I just keep chatting about Mr. Trump. That'll make it go away.
Ross lives in the heart of mound builder country, and he's written extensively about the history and folklore of giants.
He learned so much information from native elders,
and he's taken all this oral tradition and historical evidence and has synthesized the story.
Comes to the UK next week.
Oh, God.
He's avoiding London.
Oh.
Ross has been studying the
No, but there'll be
phenomenon of giant
protests.
skeleton finds
Sure,
for
listen.
2 decades. But he has a new theory
Well,
that he's about to reveal
have you
for
seen
the
the
first
big
time
baby
to
balloon
Jim
they're
and
gonna
Bill.
aerodynamic fly in London? It's so funny.
feel like it's a waste
I don't care.
This is a map of
what?
mounds as they were known.
But I don't. I think it's the public that did it. So, what's your fucking problem?
Red dots represents some major
But the
group of
taxes-
mounds for the native people. We found many accounts of people
I
with
don't know
very
if he
tall
did.
stature throughout
I don't care. It's fucking
everywhere
funny.
these earthworks were. And this will blow your mind a little bit. One time there was a great nation, and this country extended from the Hudson Bay all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. And they were called the Alejana.
But I have to
So he
admit,
approved the
when Ross
request.
first started talking about his
It was
theories, I was
crowdfunded,
skeptical.
so he didn't
It's pretty-
fucking use taxpayers' money.
And we're going back to the
Yeah,
Middle Archaic
like
period,
that's why I
perhaps as
thought it was
long
kind of funny
as
too.
6,000 years ago.
Have you seen it? It's
Ross
fucking
just blew our
massive.
mind. He's telling us
Look
that
at
he
it.
believes
It's
that
fucking
the real
funny.
story goes back over
So fucking
6,000
funny.
years.
They had a single ruler, and they even had a single language, perhaps with letters, that was all swept
6
away
meters high, so
in
it is.
prehistory.
I would have
Ross,
got a
the
proper
civilization
blimp.
left
That's what
behind
I
by this
thought.
Alejana people produced the mounds,
Call it
which
the
to this
Graf
day
Trump.
are one of the wonders of the ancient world. North America's answer
blow it
are
up
the
like the head of a
pyramids,
bird.
Machu Picchu, and Stonehenge. These structures have been demonstrated by scientists to
Yeah, people
accurately
can protest
predict the
if they want.
solstice and the equinox. Ross believes this same civilization may have been founded by a royal class of colossi.
Well, I think you're just making an argument for the sake of it, to be honest. Oh, I don't like it.
Taking all that in.
So there are better ways to protest. We all know that there's shit. But then, making a balloon and raise it up.
If what Ross is saying is true,
Well, it's part of a wider ranging protest. People are in the street and shit, so whatever.
People of tall stature believed acceptable elements. And they were
Just let them do it. They're not fucking hurting anybody. Safer they're on the street than they are on fucking Twitter. Just sit there.
giant works has haunted the mind of mankind since the dawn of recorded history, like the titans of Greek mythology, royal spawns of gods and mortals, Atlas, who held the world on his shoulders, Prometheus, who brought fire to the human race. But could these fantastic
I still like the fact it's a giant drum baby balloon.
lost race of gigantic rulers may also have towered over Ross's civilization of the
They could have done a better job.
This makes the picture so much clearer. It really does. The idea
Well,
of
I thought I would,
royal class buried in mounds really resonates.
This idea
Ian Paisley Jr. deleted his Twitter account. No, this is the first time. It's not he deleted a tweet, he's deleted the account completely. So has another DBMP.
skeletons were discovered in to not be consistent that there was a consistent rates of at least 7 feet to 8 feet all over these parts. But this is a particularly interesting one. This, they found an 8 foot or so skeleton, very deep in there. They found a small jar of corn. When they actually got some results, and it's corn much more abundant and strong than what sailors were growing at the time. So we have more evidence of certainly advanced than they were working there. Actually, something we get into in the book because too much here, they were working in the natural habitats, even working on the enemy's getting closer to victory. Lightning, elements to charge up certain grounds, fertilize the landscape, ceremonial producing purposes too. We had West Virginia, it's another hub of giants of Kanawha Valley.
See what he said.
Very interesting research.
I know what he said.
This particular place, absolutely amazing. Frame Creek Moundsville, places in West Virginia. And it was here they found this particular, they could only find these skeletons, these royal burials. They found this very interesting tablet, which is now missing. Someone made some copies of it, and we fell into Harvard Line.
So, somebody asked Ian Beasley, even though his account's gone, has Ian Beasley Jr. been hanging out in the back of you? And someone called Fiona Beasley's like, your remarks are disgusting and defamatory and you be taken further. And good luck with that, love.
The giants.
Good fucking luck with that.
Potential, the Nephilim, the Watchers, the early biblical accounts, evidence of them in North America, which is one of the things that the Christian giantologists absolutely love. And but we are finding that this is the case. We're finding connections between these great cultures. On my trip, the only giant skeleton I managed to witness. This is the one at the Mutta Museum
and the train types
in Philadelphia. 7'6", found in northern Kentucky.
They're more expensive.
In the late 1800s. The problem is we think this one has gigantism acromegaly. So we don't know if this is a mound builder or whether they messed around with it to make it look like it's got acromegaly or what. We're not too sure. No tests have been done on this. But when I looked into the records at the museum, I did find
but that could actually be a huge amount of fucking oil and
said, look, you can have this, but you cannot tell anyone where you got it from or where it was uncovered exactly, and left it at that. So whoever gave it to them didn't want them to know some information, which is intriguing nonetheless. Oh, Arkansas. The giants, there's very interesting sites up in this area. We have Chickasaw mounds.
The enemy is attacking our base.
These were basically, there was a whole huge amount of excavation, if you want to call it that, or more like obliteration, in the 1800s, and numerous reports came forward. This was like a giant town, city. The skeletons between 8 feet and 10 feet tall were uncovered and reported. There was even one hanging around in one of the tents they put up when they were excavating. That was just lying there. This 8-foot giant skeleton was lying there for weeks, and then suddenly one day it was gone. So whether it walked up and had enough, walked away, or whether it was stolen, we don't know. But this is all that's left really of the Chickasaw mounds. I went up there myself a couple of years ago, and even recently in 1976, when they were digging the foundations of a nearby house, they found a 7'6" tall skeleton. And so a 29-inch femur was discovered, which would be of a skeleton 8 feet tall, extremely large jaws, very powerful cheekbones. Again, this is Ozark Caves, west. This was a report given by the pioneer there regarding the he was exposed to the range in the 1900s, and they found basically skeleton. They mixed the bones together. This is quite rare in North America. You've got a triple root or mound set. This is a found in it by the Coca-Cola Mining Company. And they found amazing artifacts of stone, copper, shell, fabrics, and other such things. They developed so much was discovered. Also, they found some giant squids. Of course, why wouldn't you? So among the finds was an extremely large female, would have been something about 9 feet tall. Very normal sized people. So we see in this elites and then their helpers or whatever, very excellent. So we do find not only in America, but in different parts of the world. This one was 7 foot tall. And this is just, I mentioned this already, this was where when the giant eggs these things, I mean, they were just so blasé at that point, the skeletons, just lying around, and then stuff. This is myself, Jim, we were investigating this, this was discovered in Illinois, these particular hammerheads or axe heads, which were wood attached. One of them is 36 pounds, I think it's 20 kilos or so. Another one is 40.5 pounds. We witnessed these, we photographed and filmed them. And basically, this is Rob Smith, he's an artifact collector. He got in touch with us after we saw the TV show. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to because we try and wheel that some of this.
You hear the news? William Dunlop's dead.
It's almost impossible. These were found, some of these were found in the same places.
He died in a crash in the Scariest 100 in Dublin.
Which was found in Surrey. It's quite a famous one. We have a whole chapter.
Yeah, they fucking never have it of that.
But this is where the problem lies. Deep within the Smithsonian files. There's me at the Smithsonian.
There's 3 of them that have died. I was there the year Robert fucking got niggered as well.
I'm not going to give you a big history of the Smithsonian, except that it was founded in the mid-1800s, and an English guy, James Smithson, left the equivalent of about $13 million to America to create an institute for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. That was a great idea at the time, and it basically consisted of 105,000 gold coins. But Congress decided to invest the money in the Treasury bonds issued by the state of Arkansas, and the bonds became worthless and they defaulted and they lost all the money. But luckily, the government was charging everyone tax, so John Quincy Adams created that amount of money, and the institution was then founded again. So there's a strange little story at the very beginning of the Smithsonian Institute. An English guy who'd never been to America wanted to found this amazing institution for the diffusion and increase of knowledge, and it's actually become the opposite. It's become the suppression and hiding of the knowledge, as we'll see.